I never imagined that an invitation from my own daughter could feel like a trap. The text came late at night, glowing on my phone in the quiet of my bedroom. Mom, we are having a weekend retreat at the cabin. Just us. Come, we really want you there. At first, I smiled. A cabin getaway, family time, fresh air. I had not felt truly relaxed in years. But as I read the message again, something pricked at the back of my mind. Too formal. Too scripted. Jessica usually texted with emojis, exclamation marks, warmth. But this message? It felt rehearsed, like words borrowed from someone else's mouth. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, Jessica was my only child. She had always been close to me, always trusted me. Her husband, Leonard, had been in the picture for 5 years now. I had never fully trusted him, though he played the part of the perfect gentleman well, polished, charming, the kind of man who knew how to smile at a camera and charm everyone at a dinner table. But the very first time I met him, I saw it. A flicker in his eyes. Cold. Calculating. Like he was always measuring, not people, but worth. And now, the memory of that look returned to me as I read Jessica's oddly stiff invitation. Still, I went. What kind of mother turns down time with her daughter? The drive to the cabin was only a few hours, but it felt like descending into another world. The further I went, the narrower the road became, lined by towering trees. Shadows stretched across the asphalt as the late afternoon sun dipped lower behind the hills. It was beautiful, too beautiful. Isolated. Silent. By the time I lost phone service, a chill had already settled in my chest. When I pulled up, Jessica came running out to greet me. She hugged me so tightly I could feel her heartbeat hammering against mine. Mom, it's been too long. You will love it here, she said, her eyes warm. But then I noticed it, the quick glance she threw toward Leonard. A flicker of something I could not place. Tension. Guilt. Fear. Leonard followed her out onto the porch, arms crossed, smile polished. Good to see you, he said smoothly. We have prepared everything for your stay. Just relax, Mom. Relax. The word echoed, heavy. My instincts whispered, beware. The cabin itself was rustic but luxurious, perched right on the edge of a cliff. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered sweeping views of the endless forest. The air smelled of pine, wood smoke, and faintly of something metallic, almost like blood or new nails hammered into wood. Inside, Jessica busied herself setting out snacks while Leonard circled the property like a hawk. He pretended to check the surroundings, but the way he lingered by the windows, scanning the tree line with deliberate intensity, made my pulse quicken. Finally, I asked, Leonard, why are you acting so strange? Is something wrong? He laughed, but the sound was hollow. Of course not. Just making sure everything's perfect for your stay. Don't worry so much. But I did worry. After dinner, I wandered the cabin, pretending to admire the decor. That's when I noticed the keypad near the main door. Sleek, modern, glowing faintly. Scratches lined the edges, as though someone had pried at it. Why had not Leonard mentioned it? Before I could study it further, Jessica appeared behind me. Mom, come on. Let's relax, she said, slipping her hand into mine. Her grip was warm, but her eyes darted nervously again toward Leonard. The unease would not leave me. That night, the forest outside was pitch black, the silence broken only by the occasional chirp of a cricket. I lay in the guest room staring at the ceiling, waiting. Listening. At first, only normal sounds, the hum of the cabin, the faint rush of wind. But then, faint creaks. Rhythmic. Footsteps. Someone was moving outside my room. My heart pounded as I slipped from the bed. The floorboards whispered under my feet. Then, click. The unmistakable sound of a lock engaging. I rushed to the door, fumbling for the keycard they would given me. I swiped it. Nothing. Tried again. Red light. I punched the keypad. Denied. Again. Denied. Panic clawed up my throat. Jessica? Leonard? Open the door. Silence. Then I smelled it. Acrid. Sharp. Smoke. I pressed my face to the floor and saw it, thin curls of gray drifting under the door. They had locked me in. I ran to the windows. Every sliding door was bolted shut. I shoved a chair against one, but it didn't budge. Smoke thickened. My lungs burned. And then I remembered the cameras I would seen earlier, small black eyes tucked into corners of the living room. Leonard wanted me to be watched. He wanted me to panic. Why? Why me? Was it about money? The estate? Something Jessica had told him? My mind raced even as the smoke choked me. Then came the voice. Soft. Cold. From the hallway. Mom, maybe you should not have come. It was not Jessica. My stomach dropped. Leonard. I sank to the floor, coughing, forcing myself to think. If I screamed, no one would hear. If I begged, he would not care. My only chance was to outplay him. So I stilled my breath, flattened myself against the floor, and whispered to my own pounding heart, pretend you were dead. Pretend you were already gone. If they thought I was gone, maybe they had lowered their guard. Maybe I would get a chance. And then I saw it. A sliver of light glinted under the sofa. A folder, edges crisp, sticking up just far enough to catch my eye. Proof. Whatever Leonard was hiding, whatever this night truly was about, it was in that folder. Smoke swirled thicker. My eyes burned. My body screamed to collapse. But I knew one thing for certain. If I died here tonight, the truth would vanish with me. If I lived, everything would change. So I crawled inch by inch toward that folder. Toward the proof. Toward survival. Because sometimes the only way to fight back is to let them believe they have already won. And I was not going to let Leonard or anyone win. Not tonight. Smoke curled around the edges of the cabin like a living creature, whispering threats in a language only my instincts could understand. My chest burned, my eyes stung, and still I forced myself forward, crawling across the floor toward that faint glimmer beneath the sofa. The folder. Thin. Worn. Important. My hands trembled as I yanked it free, coughing until my throat felt raw. The smoke was not just suffocating my body, it was trying to smother my will. But I clung to the folder like it was oxygen itself. I flipped it open just enough to peek. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Signed documents. And then, the blow that nearly knocked the air from me harder than the smoke. A note in Jessica's handwriting. Make sure Mom never sees this. $5 billion is ours. My heart stuttered. Jessica? My daughter. Had she really been part of this? Or was Leonard twisting her hand, forging her words, turning her against me? The thought cut deeper than the fire licking through the cabin. The betrayal of blood is heavier than flames. I pressed myself against the wall, clutching the folder. My eyes watered, not just from the smoke, but from the ache of realizing the family I trusted might have sharpened the knife themselves. The fire was not raging yet, but the smoke was thickening, making the air taste bitter, my vision blurry. Time was slipping away. If I stayed here, the cabin would become my coffin. I had to move. Not just to live, but to expose the truth. I crawled toward the door, only to realize the lock was not just engaged, it was electronically jammed. Leonard's plan was precise, cruel. He did not just want me trapped. He wanted me erased. Why so much hate? Why not just ask for the money? Then I remembered the cameras. Leonard was not simply killing me, he was watching me die. Waiting for panic, savoring it. Not this time. Pretending dead had bought me seconds before, but now I needed more than pretending. I needed strategy. I needed proof that outlived me. That's when I saw it, a vent near the ceiling. Small, dusty, but just big. Enough for me to squeeze through if I could summon the strength. I dragged a chair over, coughing violently as I climbed. Every step up felt like climbing out of a grave. My fingers clawed at the vent cover, tugging until screws rattled loose. The smoke pressed against me like a hand, but I shoved myself inside. The metal was freezing against my skin, and the air was no cleaner, but it was a path. A way forward. And as I crawled, pressed between metal walls, I heard him. Leonard. His voice drifted through the vent, low, muttering to himself in the living room. She can't find it. Not a chance. Everything is perfect. Perfect. My blood ran hot with defiance. He thought perfection meant my silence. But perfection was about to become his undoing. The vent opened into Leonard's office. A private domain, files stacked neatly, computers humming, a safe sunk into the wall. And there, glowing in the dim light, sat a laptop. Its lock-in screen flickered, but it was still open on financial software. My heart pounded. Could I reach it before he noticed? I thought of Ethan, my grandson. Clever, tech-savvy. If he were here, he would break through walls of code in minutes. But he was not here. This was me. Just me, my desperation, and my will not to let my family's story end in smoke and betrayal. Sliding quietly from the vent, I landed behind the desk. My knees ached, my lungs screamed, but my hands flew to the laptop. Emails. Transfers. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. Proof. Overwhelming, undeniable proof. And worse than I feared, Jessica's name appeared again and again. Her signature on documents. Her initials next to transfers. This was not Leonard acting alone. Tears welled hot, blurring the screen. My daughter. My blood. Was she complicit? Manipulated? Afraid? The truth was tangled, but one thing was clear: they wanted me gone. The smoke thickened, seeping under the office door, curling like a serpent into the room. And then, a footstep. Deliberate. Heavy. Coming closer. I scanned the room desperately. Fire extinguisher. My eyes locked on it. I lunged, grabbing it just as flames licked across the hallway. I sprayed, the hiss slicing through the crackle of fire. For a moment, it felt like I was pushing back death itself. Sparks scattered, smoke shifted, and adrenaline burned through my veins. The door flung open. Leonard. His face froze in shock. His eyes widened, then narrowed, seeing me alive, standing, not choking, but armed with evidence. What? How? He stammered, words cracking under the weight of disbelief. I lifted the laptop, holding it like a weapon sharper than any blade. I found everything, I said, voice steady despite the fire. Every transfer. Every forged signature. Every plan to erase me. His mask slipped. Rage flared in his eyes. You don't understand, he snapped, fumbling for his phone. You were ruining everything. No, I shot back. I am saving everything. And then Jessica appeared. Her face pale, eyes wide, trembling in the doorway. Smoke framed her like a ghost. Mom, what are you doing? She whispered. Her voice quivered, splintering with something I could not read. Fear, guilt, maybe even regret. I stared at her. My daughter. The girl I raised, protected, loved beyond all measure. And now, possibly, my betrayer. Ask yourself that, Jessica, I said softly. What are you doing? For a moment, silence swallowed the flames. Her lips parted, but no words came. The fire roared louder, alarm shrieking. The cabin was transforming from a trap into chaos. I knew my time was measured in seconds. With trembling hands, I pressed a key on the laptop. One command. One click. The evidence surged forward, sending copies of every file, every email, every transfer to secure accounts, to lawyers, to authorities I had set up long ago in case of emergencies. Leonard lunged forward, but it was too late. His hand brushed the laptop just as the files flew beyond his reach. My voice cut through the smoke. "It's over, Leonard. You can't bury the truth. Not now. Not ever." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. Her hand shook as if torn between two worlds, between loyalty to him and love for me. For the first time that night, hope bloomed in my chest. Not just survival. Justice. I had proof. I had outlasted fire, betrayal, and fear. And now I held power, not Leonard. The cabin crackled, beams groaning as flames consumed the walls. But I was not afraid anymore. Because I knew one thing with absolute certainty: they thought they had trapped me, but all they had done was set the stage. And I was rewriting the ending. The fire alarm screamed, a shrill chorus bouncing off the cabin walls like 1,000 voices warning me at once. The air was thick with smoke, choking me with every breath. Each step I took across the floorboards made them groan as if the house itself was begging me to stop. Leonard stood in the center of the room, his figure blurred by haze and firelight. His eyes darted between me and the glowing laptop clutched in my arms. That laptop was not just a machine, it was truth, living, pulsing, undeniable. And Leonard knew it. His plan, his careful orchestration of fire and betrayal, was collapsing faster than he could comprehend. Jessica stood frozen in the doorway. Her expression was a battlefield, fear, guilt, disbelief, all tangled in her features. "Mom, please," she whispered again. The words trembled in the smoke, fragile and half-broken. Had she been coerced? Or had she been a willing accomplice? That question clawed at me harder than the flames licking the walls. I pressed the laptop tighter to my chest. The evidence within it burned hotter than the fire around us: emails, transfers, signatures, contracts. "You thought you could erase me," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "But truth has a way of surviving fire, just like me." Leonard's face twisted, his control fracturing. He lunged, his hand reaching for the laptop, but instinct and raw adrenaline carried me backward. "Give it to me," he barked. His voice was sharp, commanding, but I heard the panic behind it. For the first time, Leonard was not in control. The flames roared louder, greedy, clawing higher across the walls. Smoke quilled like serpents, biting into my lungs. I scanned the room desperately, searching for escape. My gaze fell on the vent near the floor. My only chance. Then, crack. A ceiling beam snapped, crashing down between Leonard and me. Sparks exploded. He staggered, coughing violently, his once perfect composure unraveling. I seized the moment. "Run!" I shouted at Jessica. "Take the evidence and get out." Her legs trembled, but she obeyed. She snatched the laptop from my hands and darted toward the exit. But even as she moved, suspicion tore at me. Could I trust her? Or would she run straight back to him the second she cleared the smoke? I had no time for answers. Leonard straightened, fury blazing in his eyes. "You will regret this," he roared, voice breaking between rage and desperation. His words fell flat against the roaring fire. I dove to the vent, wrenching the cover loose with blistered fingers. The metal was hot, searing, but I forced myself through, crawling, choking, lungs burning. Behind me, I could hear Leonard stumbling closer. His shadow stretched across the floor, flickering in the firelight. My chest tightened with terror. Think. Move. Survive. My hand groped blindly until it found a broken chair leg. I shoved it back through the vent opening. It clattered across the floor. Leonard cursed, momentarily distracted. That second was enough. I wriggled free, tumbling into the night air beyond the burning cabin. The cold hit me like a slap. My lungs ached, my skin burned, but I was alive. Behind me, Leonard's voice cut through the chaos, shouting Jessica's name, his rage a whip in the night. But I could not look back. Not yet. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my hands trembling, coated with soot and sweat. I had no time for hesitation. I opened files, attached evidence, and sent them to my lawyer, to trusted allies, to an anonymous news outlet. Leonard could burn buildings, but he could not burn the truth if it lived everywhere at once. The shriek of sirens pierced the air. Relief and fear twisted in my chest as flashing lights tore through the trees. Firefighters surged past me, their shouts colliding with the roar of the blaze. And then, Leonard. His figure emerged in the firelight, wild-eyed, restrained by officers who forced his hands behind his back. His mouth twisted, spitting denial, spitting blame. But the laptop, the files, the recordings, all of it roared louder than his lies. Jessica stumbled toward me, tears streaking her soot-stained face. "Mom." Her voice cracked. "What did we just? How?" I didn't let her finish. My eyes locked onto hers, searching for truth. Was there remorse? Or just fear of punishment? "You need to tell them everything," I said, my tone like iron. "All of it. Otherwise, we all lose." Her lips trembled. I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't think, stop. My voice cut sharper than any flame. "Be honest now. For once in your life." Officers and investigators swarmed us, gathering every word, every detail. I laid it all out, the locked cabin, the betrayal, the billions stolen, the plan to burn me alive. Leonard's protests grew weaker with every piece of evidence I revealed. And then Ethan, my grandson, appeared. His small frame stood tall at the edge of the chaos, his tablet in his hands. He had been recording everything. Every scream, every threat, every ember of truth. My heart nearly broke from pride and sorrow all at once. He had risked himself to ensure Leonard could not win. His courage was the final nail in Leonard's empire of lies. I stepped back as they dragged Leonard away, his smirk shattered, his power dissolved. For once, he was nothing but a man cornered by his own sins. Jessica's eyes glistened, and I could see the war inside her, guilt, love, survival. "Mom," she whispered again, but I didn't answer. Not yet. For the first time in hours, I allowed myself to breathe. My lungs ached, my body shook, but I was alive. The fire raged on behind us, but the evidence was secured, the truth unleashed. And yet, even as I stood there, victorious, a question gnawed at me. Could a family survive this? Could trust ever be rebuilt from ashes and betrayal? I didn't know. But I did know this. I had survived. I had proof. And in survival, I had found my power. The courtroom was silent, almost reverent, when I stepped inside. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each sound echoing louder than it should have, as if the building itself recognized the gravity of what was about to unfold. My heart beat a rhythm that matched the tension in the room, steady, unrelenting, impossible to ignore. Cameras lined the back wall, red lights blinking like watchful eyes. Reporters scribbled furiously, their pens scratching a record of history being written in real time. Even the judge, a man who had sat through countless trials, lifted his brow ever so slightly when he saw me. His gaze sharpened, assessing, almost whispering a silent question, who is this woman, and why does she look like she carries the weight of the truth? At the defendant's table, Leonard sat surrounded by his high-powered lawyers. His usual smirk was there, but it was not the same. It was thinner, tighter, stretched too far across his face like glass about to crack. His hands flexed on the table, but his eyes betrayed him. For just a flicker of a second, I saw it, fear. I inhaled deeply and held up the laptop. He knew what it contained. I knew what it meant. That weight was heavier than anything I had ever carried, not because of its size, but because of the undeniable truth it stored. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady but resonant enough to pierce the hush. "I have evidence that will show this court the full extent of Leonard's actions." The judge leaned forward, his gavel resting idly in his palm. Proceed. The bailiff brought over cables, and with trembling fingers I connected the laptop to the projector. The screen flickered to life, casting cold light across the wood-paneled courtroom. Images and files filled the screen, bank transfers to accounts not his, contracts signed in secrecy, emails dripping with manipulation. Leonard's lawyers rose in protest, but the judge's sharp voice cut them down. Sit. Let her speak. I turned back to the audience, to the cameras, to Leonard himself. For months, Leonard orchestrated a plan to erase me, to silence me. He locked me in a burning cabin and walked away, believing fire could finish what his lies had started. All for one purpose: $5 billion. Our family's inheritance. Gasps rippled across the room. Reporters' pens nearly tore their notepads. Leonard's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might break. He tried to interject, but I lifted a hand. No interruptions. You will hear the truth. Click. Another file appeared on the projector, video footage. Ethan's recordings. My documentation. Time-stamped evidence that cut deeper than any words I could conjure. The footage showed Leonard's threats, his manipulations, his plans spoken aloud. The images of the cabin's smoldering wreckage paired with the audio of his voice created a tapestry of guilt no one could deny. Jessica shifted in her seat, pale as paper. Her lips trembled. Mom, you should not. I turned sharply, raising a finger to silence her. This isn't just about money. This is about trust shattered, lives endangered, a family broken by greed. Every word I spoke seemed to draw the room tighter, until even the air itself felt like it was waiting to see what came next. The judge's voice, calm but edged with curiosity, cut through. How did you survive the fire? And how did you manage to preserve this evidence? I allowed a pause, letting silence stretch, feeding the suspense. Then I answered, my voice softer, steadier. I pretended to be dead. My husband whispered the plan as the smoke thickened. Don't move, don't. Breathe, wait for the chance. I crawled through the vent while flames devoured the walls. And when I emerged, I didn't run into silence. I documented everything. Every attempt to silence me became another nail in his coffin. Murmurs erupted like a wave across the courtroom. Leonard's lawyers shuffled papers frantically, but nothing could undo what had been revealed. I motioned toward Ethan. My grandson stood, tablet clutched tightly, his small frame radiating more courage than men 3 times his size. He handed over files that showed Leonard instructing him to falsify documents and recordings of coercion. The judge's jaw tightened, his knuckles whitening around his gavel. And then I asked the question that had haunted me since the night of the fire. I didn't direct it to the judge, or the lawyers, or even the cameras. I asked it to the air itself, to everyone and no one. How far would you go to silence your own family? To betray blood, to risk lives, to steal billions for power? The silence that followed was deafening. The reporters stopped writing. The jurors shifted uncomfortably. Even Leonard's breathing sounded too loud, too jagged. I turned my gaze on him. You thought we were weak, Leonard. That survival was impossible. But survival doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits for the moment to reveal itself. His mouth opened, a desperate shout on his tongue, but the judge slammed his gavel. Quiet. Let her finish. I looked out over the courtroom, every eye on me. My throat was raw, but my voice carried the weight of everything we had endured. You tried to bury us in ash, but we survived. And now, justice will dig you out of the empire you built on lies. The room erupted in whispers. Journalists leaned forward, hungry for every word. Cameras clicked like gunfire, capturing Leonard's paling face. His aura of control, once so unshakable, was gone. What sat before us wasn't a mastermind, it was a man cornered by his own sins. The judge called a recess to review the evidence. My legs trembled as I stepped back from the stand. The marble floor felt colder now, grounding me after the storm. Jessica hesitated before approaching. Mom, did you really have all this? Her voice cracked. All along? Yes. I laid a hand on her trembling shoulder. Every detail. I could not let him win. Not again. Ethan clutched his tablet. Grandma, we did it. He can't hurt us anymore. I smiled faintly, though my chest was tight with unspent emotion. This is just the beginning. Survival isn't enough now. It's time for accountability. When the judge returned, his expression was grave. He looked at Leonard with steel in his eyes. Mr. Leonard, the evidence presented here is substantial and deeply troubling. You will remain in custody until further proceedings. Any attempt to interfere with this process will result in additional charges. Leonard's face broke at last. The smirk dissolved, the arrogance drained. He looked at me, then at Jessica, then at Ethan, realizing, finally, that the walls of his empire had caved in. I exhaled a breath I had not realized I was holding. For months, fear had followed me like a shadow. But now, there was light. The courtroom buzzed with tension, with relief, with questions about what would come next. But for me, one truth cut sharper than all the rest: we were not just survivors. We were victors. And though healing would take time, though scars would remain, one truth stood unbroken: Leonard's greed had been his undoing. And justice, real, undeniable justice, was finally within reach. The aftermath of the courtroom revelation hit like a tidal wave. Headlines screamed Leonard's name, his face plastered across every news channel, his crimes dissected in articles, podcasts, and talk shows. Strangers debated our lives as if we were characters in some crime drama, their words echoing through the airwaves while I tried to piece together the fragments of my own reality. But here's what no journalist captured: what really mattered, the scars you cannot see. Because when the camera switched off and the microphones were packed away, I was left staring at the shadows Leonard had carved into my family. And the truth was clear: the trial was not the end. It was only the beginning. Every morning I woke up with the memory of the cabin seared into me. The suffocating heat. The smell of smoke clinging to my skin. The crackle of flames licking the walls as oxygen thinned and death crept closer with every breath. I had convinced myself I would die there, burned into silence, erased by a man who once smiled at our dinner table. And though I survived, the weight of that night pressed down on me each dawn. Jessica carried her own ghosts. She barely spoke for days, her face pale and her eyes glassy. One evening, she finally broke. Mom, her voice faltered. Words dangled in the air like fragile glass. I didn't rush her. I knew forcing them would shatter her. At last, she whispered, I can't believe I trusted him. I knew something was wrong, but I told myself it was just me. That I was being paranoid. I looked at her, my heart aching for the daughter who had once believed love was enough to save a man. Trust blinds us, Jessica, I said softly. We hand it over, hoping it will keep us safe. But sometimes it becomes a weapon in the wrong hands. What matters isn't that you were deceived, it's that you saw the truth before it was too late. She nodded, but tears welled anyway. Betrayal doesn't vanish just because truth arrives. Ethan, though, was a different storm altogether. He rarely cried. Instead, he grew quiet, watchful, like a soldier in waiting. One night, he slipped his tablet into my hands. Look, Grandma. The screen was alive with headlines, hashtags, and comments flooding every corner of social media. Survivor Grandma outs billion-dollar fraudster. Family betrayal caught on tape, the cabin that almost killed them. Bravery in the face of fire. He looked up at me, eyes wide. They were calling you a hero. I felt the corner of my mouth twitch. A hero? No. Heroes plan for glory. I had planned for survival. Heroic? I murmured. No, Ethan. We were careful. We were smart. And we survived. That's enough. But even as I spoke, I felt something stir deep inside me, a spark of satisfaction. Maybe the world needed to see that survival was possible. Maybe they needed to know greed didn't always win. Meanwhile, Leonard was facing a different storm. The empire he built on lies collapsed overnight. Business partners cut ties, shareholders pulled out, investors demanded answers. His name became poison whispered in boardrooms. Every email he had sent, every contract he had forged, every manipulation he had hidden now returned as a blade against him. The man who once strutted into rooms, smirking like a king untouchable, was now cornered like a rat. And still, I asked myself, how could someone so close, someone I once trusted, be capable of such evil? The question tormented me at night. But another question pressed harder. What did surviving this teach me? The answer whispered in the quiet hours. Vigilance. Strength. Patience. I had learned that survival isn't just breathing, it's planning, observing, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. The neighbors came next. Some knocked hesitantly, unsure of reaching out with reopened wounds. Clara, my lifelong friend, broke through the silence first. She wrapped her arms around me so tightly I thought my ribs might crack. I thought I lost you, she whispered. Her tears soaked my shoulder. When the fire made the news, her voice broke. It's all right, I soothed, patting her back. We were here. That's what matters. The rest can be rebuilt. But even as I spoke, shadows lingered. Because what no one understood, what I could never quite silence, was the endless list of what-ifs. What if Annette's match had burned quicker? What if I hadn't played dead long enough? What if Ethan's recordings had failed? Every night those questions slithered back, quilling around my throat until I woke gasping, drenched in sweat. Survival is not relief, it's a battlefield where fear continues to fight long after the enemy is gone. Jessica changed too. She was no longer the naive woman who excused red flags as stress or misunderstanding. She had been scarred, but not broken. Slowly, cautiously, she began to trust herself again, to believe the instinct she once silenced. Ethan, though, became fiercely protective. His shoulders squared whenever the phone rang. His eyes darted to the windows whenever a car slowed outside. What if he tries again? He asked one night, voice low but firm. I placed my hands on his shoulders, staring into eyes far too old for his age. Then we will deal with it. But listen to me, fear isn't strength. Intelligence is. And we've already proven we were smarter than him. He swallowed, nodding, but I saw the weight still pressing down. Survival had made him a guardian too soon. Publicly, our story spread like wildfire. Letters, emails, even strangers stopping me on the street. You showed me it's possible to fight back. I realized then, our survival wasn't just ours anymore. It belonged to every family betrayed by greed, every person silenced by manipulation. We had become a symbol, a cautionary tale, yes, but also a testament to endurance. Even Leonard's lawyers seemed shaken. When they looked at me across the courtroom, I could see it, the flicker of doubt, the unspoken question, how had she stayed 10 steps ahead? The answer was simple. I had lived long enough to know survival isn't about strength, it's about foresight. And Leonard, for all his power, had never understood that. Still, the nights remained hard. I dreamed of the cabin often, the flames dancing, Leonard's voice echoing like a specter, the suffocating panic of smoke filling my lungs. I woke trembling, sometimes convinced I was back there, clawing through vents with blistered hands. Only when I touched the scars on my arms did I remember I survived. The healing came slowly. Shared meals, cautious laughter, Ethan's silly jokes, Jessica's tentative smiles. Each one was a brick in the wall we were rebuilding, a wall of trust and safety. But each time Leonard's name appeared on the news, a shiver rippled through us. Safety, we had learned, was fragile. One night, Jessica asked the question I knew was coming. Mom, do you think we will ever really be safe again? The silence stretched between us. Then I answered honestly. Safety isn't guaranteed, Jessica. It never was. But awareness is. Preparation is. Courage is. And we have all three. Ethan leaned against me, his voice steady. And we have each other. I smiled, pulling them close. Yes. That's the greatest shield of all. Life after the trial was not peace, it was adjustment. We navigated whispers, stares, strangers projecting their own fears onto us. But beneath it all, I carried a single truth. We had faced the fire and emerged alive. The greatest lessons came not in grand gestures but in small moments. Jessica's smile as she watered the garden, Ethan showing me a contraption he built, Clara sipping tea beside me in the quiet porch light. These were victories, tiny, precious, undeniable. And yet, at night, one final question always lingered. How do you repay the man who tried to erase you? The answer was not vengeance anymore. It was proof. Proof that truth survives. Proof that love endures. Proof that a family, broken but unyielding, could outlast even the darkest betrayal. Leonard was losing everything, his empire dismantled, his reputation shredded, his freedom slipping through his fingers. And as his world crumbled, I realized we didn't just survive him. We defeated him. That night, as silence settled over the house, I whispered a vow to the darkness. No one else will suffer from his schemes. Not while I breathe. The fire, the betrayal, the trial, they had not been in vain. And for the first time since the cabin, I slept without fear crushing my chest. Because survival wasn't just about living through the fire, it was about carrying its lessons forward. And we had done exactly that. The morning after the last hearing, I awoke to a silence that felt heavier than the night. The final courtroom session was scheduled for today, and my heart pounded with a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was it. No more hiding. No more running. No more pretending. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at my hands. They trembled faintly, the aftershocks of weeks of adrenaline still pulsing through me. I whispered to myself, almost as if speaking the words could steady my soul, "This ends today." Jessica appeared in the doorway, her face pale but composed. Her shoulders carried the same exhaustion I felt, but beneath it, there was steel. "Mom, Grandma," she said softly. "Whatever happens today, we were ready. We were together." I reached for her hand, squeezing gently. "Yes, together. That's what matters." Ethan stood behind her, tall and sharp-eyed despite being only 15. There was no boyish hesitation in him anymore, only the calm intensity of someone forged by fire. He gave me a small nod. "We have got this," he said. "We can handle it." And somehow, hearing those words from him made me believe it. The drive to the courthouse was quiet. The city streets were calmer than in previous days, but inside me, the tension snapped and sparked like live wires. My stomach churned as I imagined Leonard's smirk waiting on the other side, his final desperate attempts to twist the narrative, to regain control. I could not let myself falter. Not today. Inside the courthouse, the air was electric. Lawyers whispered in corners. Reporters shuffled papers, cameras clicking, keyboards rattling as they live-fed updates to the world. Court officers moved briskly, their expressions betraying their awareness of the storm about to break. Everyone had been following our story. What started as whispers had become headlines. And now, curiosity had transformed into obsession. When the judge entered, the room fell into reverent silence. He was a stern figure, his black robes hanging heavy, his eyes sharp as blades. For the first time, I saw Leonard falter. His face, usually smug and controlled, paled at the sight of the judge. A tiny smile tugged at my lips. The predator who once made me tremble was trembling himself. The session began. Witness after witness recounted the night in the cabin, the locked doors, the spreading fire, the smoke curling along the floor, the desperate fight to survive. I listened, each retelling pulling me back into the terror, but also fortifying me. My fear had become evidence. My pain had become a weapon. When it was my turn to speak, I felt the eyes of the entire courtroom pressing into me, jury, reporters, strangers across the world watching from screens. My throat tightened, but I lifted my chin. I thought I was going to die, I said, voice steady though my heart raced. I thought my grandson would grow up without his mother. I thought my daughter would never wake up again. But I also thought of something else, that if I had even one chance to expose Leonard, I would take it. And I did. Because the truth deserves to survive, even when people try to bury it. The courtroom was silent. Not a cough, not a shuffle, not even a pen scratching on paper. Just silence. Leonard's defense sputtered like a dying engine. Each time he spoke, his words were undercut by evidence. His emails, his messages, security footage, the paper trail of his attempt to siphon $5 billion into accounts that were not his. For every lie, we had a countermeasure. For every excuse, we had proof. And slowly, the mask slipped. His hands trembled. His voice wavered. The once powerful man was now just another criminal, cornered by his own greed. I kept asking myself the same haunting question. How could someone I once trusted, someone who sat at our table, laughed with us, called us family, do this? The answer was simple and chilling. Greed doesn't care about blood. It corrodes love, blinds loyalty, and devours conscience. The jury leaned forward as the trial neared its close. I saw it in their eyes, the empathy, the outrage, the certainty that no excuse could redeem Leonard. Jessica bit her lip until it nearly bled. Ethan's hand squeezed mine so tight it almost hurt. But I welcomed the pain. It reminded me this was real, that we were still here, together. Finally, the judge spoke. His voice was steady, his words deliberate. After reviewing all evidence, testimonies, and documentation, this court finds the defendant guilty on all counts. His actions were deliberate, calculated, and driven by greed, endangering the lives of his family for personal gain. Sentencing will reflect the severity of these crimes. The gavel struck. The sound echoed like thunder. And just like that, Leonard's empire collapsed in full. Time seemed to freeze. Leonard's face drained of all color. His eyes darted wildly, searching for a lifeline. But there was none left. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow desperation. For the first time in weeks, my chest expanded fully. Relief? Vindication? Justice? The weight that had pressed on me like iron finally loosened. I exhaled, slow and steady, as tears blurred my vision. Outside, the courthouse was a frenzy. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward. But I ignored them all. My arms wrapped tightly around Jessica and Ethan, drawing them into me. That warmth, that bond, was the only headline that mattered. Leonard had tried to shatter us, but here we stood, stronger than ever. The weeks that followed were quieter. Leonard was incarcerated, his access to our lives and resources cut off entirely. The billions he lusted after slipped forever from his grasp. His name became synonymous with betrayal, his downfall a warning etched into public memory. Our community, once hesitant, returned with open arms. Neighbors brought food. Friends called. Family visited. Some wept, apologizing for not seeing the danger sooner, for not believing what we had endured. Slowly, the normal rhythms of life returned. But nothing was the same. In the quiet, I reflected. Trust is precious, but fragile. Vigilance is not paranoia, it is survival. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is walking forward despite it. And family is the shield no betrayal can pierce. Ethan had changed most of all. He carried himself with a gravity no teenager should bear, but also with pride. He had witnessed evil and chosen bravery. He had recorded, documented, and stood firm when many adults would have faltered. One evening, as the sunset bathed the porch in gold, Jessica turned to me. "Mom, do you think we will ever feel safe again?" The question hung between us, heavy and sharp. I thought for a long moment, then answered truthfully. Safety isn't promised, I said. But awareness is. Preparation is. Love is. And we have all three. Ethan leaned against my shoulder. His voice, steady and sure, sealed the moment. And we survived. That's what counts. Yes, I whispered, my gaze fixed on the fading light. We survived. And now justice has been served. In the weeks that followed, I began to write. Not for fame, not for recognition, but for memory, for warning, for truth. Each word was a stone, building a monument to survival. Maybe one day, someone trapped in their own nightmare will read it and find the courage to fight back. At night, when the house is still and shadows press close, I sometimes think back to that cabin. The flames. The smoke. Leonard's furious eyes as he realized I wasn't broken, wasn't gone. And I whispered to myself, a quiet reminder, we outsmarted him. We endured. We survived. It wasn't just a story of betrayal. It was proof that love can outlast greed, that truth can burn brighter than lies, that courage, quiet, stubborn courage, can carry you through fire. Leonard is gone from our lives, his name reduced to a cautionary tale. But us, we remain stronger, wiser, unbroken. The sun rises. Every day, golden and sure. And with each dawn, I know this, fear will never dictate our lives again. Because we faced the fire, stared into the abyss, and walked up whole. And that, above all, is the truest justice of all.